Gold, still meh. Oil, interesting. Taxes, not fun. Gun control and social media in America, we'll talk about it. Computer chip shortages, Bill Maher, China, Biden, China again, overdose deaths, and the markets, of course. All this on episode 110 of Bizarro World. I am your host, Gerardo Del Real, along with my co-host, Mr. Nick Hodge. Mr. Hodge, are you still fighting the Fed?
I am always against unnatural forces in the market, of course, especially those that exacerbate wealth inequality knowingly and tell you differently to your face. Yeah, I'm still fighting the Fed. Why?
I like it. Folks, you got exacerbate, wealth inequality, all within the first two sentences of Mr. Hodge speaking. I tell you, the brilliance. No, listen, I ask because the Fed doesn't seem to care if we're fighting the Fed or not, right? Powell came out this week again and basically said, look, I have members within the committee that disagree with some of what we're doing, but it doesn't matter what you think about inflation. It doesn't matter what you think about the deficit, which he said, we don't even need to look or consider balancing the deficit or even addressing it right now. It's time to just hold rates until 2023, which again, he believes he can control. I think the market's going to have something to say about that before 2023, but we'll see. But again, we keep saying the same thing, but the same thing keeps happening. I think it's the most predictable monetary policy ever. And we're seeing with the Biden administration that it's the most predictable, fiscal policy as well. I mean, they're proposing a $3 trillion infrastructure bill now that in part will address climate change amongst other things. And so, it begs the question, how long can you fight the Fed? And can you fight the Fed on policy, but still make money in principle?
Yeah, I mean, I was answered the question ideologically, right? I'm against and opposed to the Fed. How do you fight them in the market is another question. If you want to be solvent and have capital and asset appreciation, but you just have to be able to read the tea leaves or listen to people who can, read the tea leaves and apply systems and metrics to it, because the quote unquote officials or representatives or whatever you want to call them, like Jerome Powell, are just gonna not give it to you straight or outright lie. I mean, what was his quote this week? I know he had one about Bitcoin, but he was talking about inflation. He was saying inflation will be neither particularly large nor persistent. And that's great, except inflation has been particularly large. And inflation, if you look at it as expressed in the commodities that you and I have been talking about for going on a year now, right? And so that's how you fight the Fed. And, I guess, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so if you can bank coin on, copper at 10-year highs and oil reinflating to $60 and other things, then that's how you quote unquote fight the Fed. Otherwise, the Fed is going to fight you in terms of erosion of purchasing power, etc.
Agreed. Let's talk gold. We're recording this a day early today. I was fortunate enough to get the Pfizer jab in the arm for a second time, and so we're going to start putting those vaccines to work here shortly. So you're hearing this, and it's Thursday afternoon, folks, for all of you listening on Monday. But gold right now, it's at 1727. Silver had an interesting trading day. It actually broke down to 24.41, but bounced back almost immediately and is back above the 25 level. Anything there on the commodity side? And then I want to talk drill results for several companies, because I think we're getting what's a pretty unique setup in some of the better gold names because of assay results that have been delayed for months on end. And we're finally starting to see some of those trickle in. But with the pullback in the gold price, we're not really seeing the companies take off the way that they would were gold higher. And that's an opportunity, I believe.
Not a lot there for me. Commodities still looking healthy. you start to pick them apart individually, and then you have different stories and narratives. But across the board, I think copper-based metals still looking healthy. The electric metals still doing well. Gold, yeah, quote unquote pullback. I mean, it's back above $1,700 an ounce. The earnings reports can continue to look good, and so there's lots of opportunity there. Copper specifically, some of the bigger names have sold off, is what I was looking at this week, like Rio Tinto, for example, and that's yielding like 6%. And so you can buy Rio Tinto after a bit of a sell-off or consolidation here, lock in 6% yield, and you're sort of double dipping because you're going to get that. Well, at least I would expect to get the capital appreciation plus the dividends. So no, I can't tell you when gold is going to turn. As far as the rates are concerned, that's sort of the piece of the puzzle that I think is still not troublesome, but that I'm questioning. The rates got to 1.75%, and they turned around in short order. But the correlations haven't had time to catch up. So I think we still got to wait until there's more volume in the system. And by that, I mean after Easter, because right now I think things are just sort of floating around all willy-nilly, to use a technical term.
I absolutely agree. I think we have a little bit left before we get that next leg up in both the junior space and the precious metals space, again, which presents an opportunity. You know, one company that is responding to drill results, and let's just highlight it right off the bat, is Gold Bull Resources. It announced some results here a few days back that were absolutely spectacular. Initial very first hole at Sandman from this round. Of course, this is a project that Newmont had, and Cherie Leedon, brilliant CEO of the company, you know, was able to kind of finesse her network and bring that asset into Gold Bull with a very first drill hole hit 144.8 meters of 1.67 grams per ton gold. And it's shallow from 65.5 meters. That included a 6.1 meter intercept of 10.75 grams per ton gold and 97.5 meters of 2.23 grams per ton gold from 96 meters. Mineralization is open at depth. It appears to be almost entirely oxidized. Just fantastic work and in a heck of a way to start a drill program, right? So any thoughts on the news there? The stocks responded well. You know, it hit a low of like 36 cents last week, and it's pushing 50 cents as we speak. So that one has responded on good volume.
Always good to see the market respond to drill results. And when you're structured in a way that allows that, it helps. That company's been vocal about their goals of building their assets this year. And so I think not only do the results speak for what they are in and of themselves, but I give a little bit more credence to that target of building those ounces as well.
Agreed. I talked assay delays. The labs were backed up for months. And I think, you know, two companies that really were affected share price wise and momentum wise, and we've talked about them in the past, New Nevada Sunrise Gold and New Plasterdome Gold, which collectively own 100% or the right to earn into 100% of the Kinsley Mountain Gold Project. It's a project I've liked for a very long time. We finally are starting to get consistent results, and it appears that's going to be the case moving forward. The release from the 23rd outlined a 24.1 gram per ton gold intercept over 4.6 meters. They announced 11 holes. It's important to note 3 of them had fantastic numbers. The other 8 were misses, but there were misses from 2 targets. So the western flank zone to the north, that was a miss. It's clearly open to the east. It's clearly open to the west. Up north, not so much. And I think, you know, in fairness to the company, it's essentially blind drilling because of the delays with the labs. They weren't able to get results and kind of turn the drill, right? They're making it up as they went. So I expect more misses, but I also expect more of these types of numbers, not just for the deeper sulfide stuff, but also for some oxide targets. And I think we're supposed to hear results according to New Plasterdome Gold next week on some of the oxide drilling. And again, folks, if you're listening to this on Monday, the stocks haven't really responded to the drill results. And so it'll be interesting to me what we get next week, if we get something, and then what the market does with it.
A lot more holes to come there, 27 holes still pending, including Core Holes advertising it as a new discovery there. And so I think those are going to be exciting. I think there's, well, I don't think, I'm pretty sure there's been whispers behind the scene from the partners, some of those that originally drilled that project, that are keen on these results. And it'll be interesting to see how this all comes together with all the entities that are involved, because it seems like it's got a lot more to give. And as you say, things are going to get exciting here as the spring continues and these assays start coming out of the labs.
And again, just some context for everyone out there. At its peak, Kinsley Mountain commanded a market cap of over 250 million Canadian. Right now, the combined market value of Nevada Sunrise Gold and New Plasterdome Gold is right around the 31 million Canadian mark. And so that's, that was with gold at lower prices. So a lot of drill results to come. Each of those companies has other projects that are projects of merit as well that'll see some more exploration. And, in Nevada Sunrise Gold's case, they have some very strategic water rights in Nevada, in the basin, where companies like Cypress Development, for example, are looking to build a pilot plant. And, if anybody knows anything about mining, if you don't have water, I don't care if it's lithium or gold, you're not going to be mining it. So, I've speculated in the past that those water rights alone are worth, 2, 3, possibly 4 million, depending on the suitor. And here, Nevada Sunrise Gold stands at a market cap of approximately $8 million Canadian. So, a ton of upside there. I am biased. I own a boatload of shares. I've written, I don't know how many checks. So have you, Nick, and so do you. So fingers crossed on that front, but many, many, many potential catalysts.
A lot ahead for this resource bull market, I think. And so continue to write checks, continue to take some profits off table, starting to exercise warrants. And so writing about all that, of course, in the premium newsletters.
You like exercising warrants?
I do.
It beats not exercising warrants, right?
It beats not exercising warrants. It beats watching beats watching warrants expire worthless. Yeah, for sure.
I like it. My favorite headline of the day, we're going to pivot a little bit and we're going to talk voting and democracy and America. I asked you, Nick, if you were still fighting the Fed, and you said in practical terms, you're making money with the market and you're not fighting against the Fed, but ideologically, yeah, of course, right? We don't like the wealth inequality that has been, frankly, caused in large part by the Fed and central banks around the world. But my favorite headline of the day comes from The Onion, and the headline reads, Ted Cruz decries voting rights bill as shameless power grab by American people to control the country. So for those of you that are not aware, in America, we talk a lot about democracy and our republic and ways to make it better. And, you love the country. I love the country. We have a lot of work to do. But I can tell you, from someone that has parents in Mexico and a part of Mexico right now that's undergoing a lot of turbulence. And by turbulence, I mean violence. It's really nice to have a country that, though very, very corrupt, at least does the corruption, in a less consequential way as it relates to violence on a mass scale, right? And so the Democrats in this case are looking to vote on a bill that makes it easier for people to vote. And you would think that this is something in America that would have bipartisan support, because if I'm a Republican and I put my best guy or gal up there, I want him or her to have a fair shot. I don't want people to only be able to vote up until 5 o'clock when most people get off of work after 5 o'clock. I don't want to make it difficult for people to get to the polling station by just having 2 polling stations within a 100-mile radius, which of course, excludes anybody that doesn't have transportation. And these are all things that are happening in this country right now. We're actually having a partisan debate between Democrats and Republicans about giving people access to vote. So the Brennan Center for Justice is a nonpartisan independent organization that analyzes election rules. And it's found that state lawmakers have filed 253 bills with provisions that restrict voting access in 43 states as of last month. That is insane to me. Now, in fairness to the Republicans, are there issues in that 800-page, legislation that I'm sure should be addressed and are valid concerns? Absolutely, like there is with every bill, right? But man, this, again, just forget being a Democrat, forget being a Republican, forget being a libertarian. As an American, we should be offended. You should be offended. People should be offended that we have a government in power that can't agree on whether we should have better access to vote and modernize the way that we vote. It's insane to me. Any thoughts, Nick?
Yeah, and I'm no voting and districting and gerrymandering and electoral college expert, and so I'm not going to have a real nuanced opinion of this. But of course, you should make accessibility or access to voting as easy as possible. I've even talked about direct democracy via internet several times. And we talked about over the course of the past year, as we had to do the mail-in voting because of the virus, how I, for example, didn't know that some states had just mail-in voting by default because I moved to Washington and that's how they do it here. But in Maryland, you got to go stand in line for hours at a high school or outside of high school if the line is that long, which it typically is. And so very different in different parts of the country. And then just a couple of weeks ago, I think it was Georgia, the state of Georgia, that was having proposed some rules that to make it even harder for people of color to vote. And so not only was it already so hard to vote in some places in Georgia that, there was volunteer organizations and volunteers that sprang up to give people chairs and food in line because the lines and the wait were so long. They were even trying to make that illegal, right? Like line warming and helping people out that were waiting in line for so long. So that's how far they're trying to take the law to restrict access to the vote, which is just insane when you think about it. I mean, that was like Jim Crow type stuff, right? And that's what everybody was calling it. And so this week you have it at the national level with Chuck Schumer asking his fellow senators why they're so afraid of democracy. And so again, I think, both sides use districting, et cetera, to their advantage, but you got to make access to the ballot as absolutely easy as possible. And of course, going back to your Onion headline, that's exactly right. Right? Because the politicians are the ones that like to keep the control, right? Once they're in there, as evidenced by how they write laws for their cohorts, and as evidenced by how they entrench themselves once they're elected to office. Entrench and enrich, I should add.
And that's a major point of contention here. Democrats are looking to change campaign finance laws that would prevent pools of dark money from coming into either party. And again, you would think that this would be common sense for everyone, for every single American. You shouldn't want pools of dark money to be allowed. I frankly believe there should be limits and term limits on how long you can serve, and you give us your best ideas in 6 years and then you got to go. This is not a career choice. This is, if you're going to be elected to the House, the Senate, it's to serve your country and make it better. And I don't need 40 years of your ideas. Give me the best ones you got in 6 years and then get out. And then give me fresh blood and give me fresh thoughts and give me new ideas. And let's reevaluate things, at that time. But, we're obviously far, far away from term limits and campaign finance reform if we can't even agree that dark money shouldn't be allowed to affect, the war chest of politicians around the country.
Crazy.
Crazy.
We're silly people.
We are silly people. And there were a lot of silly people this past week. I won't share on air because I don't like to be a bully. And I was blocked. I was blocked on Twitter this week.
Oh, no.
So, but I will say this. Last week we talked about the shootings, the Atlanta spa shootings that consisted of, mostly Asian people of Asian descent, and how horrific that was. And, we weren't even completely done, or I wasn't at the very least, completely done processing that before, of course, we got the horrible news out of Colorado that 10 people were killed in broad daylight at a Colorado supermarket. Guy went in and wore a purple smock and a white face mask and started firing away with an assault rifle. And so immediately, I just tweeted. I tweeted a 4-letter word. I'm trying to get better at the curse words, right? I tweeted a 4-letter word and said, we have to do better. We just got done talking about Atlanta, and I put the link up to the Bizarro World episode, and that was it. And you would think that would not be controversial. You would think that would be, yes, we have to do better. Like 10 people just lost their lives. An officer who responded, who had a father of 7, he's the first one to respond. He was amongst the dead. There's 7 babies there that now, don't have a father, 7 kids that don't have a father because some guy was having a bad day again and decided he was going to go shoot up people in the supermarket. And the response that I received to we have to do better, the response was something, stick to mining. And if I hear any crap, I'm blocking you. And so, anybody that knows me knows you're probably going to hear something back on that one. So I fired back. And next thing I know, I wanted to go see what the response was going to be. And I was blocked. So I'll share that one off air. But, this tragedy is we talked last week about, getting back outside and things opening back up and the pace of the vaccination efforts and how that seems to be gaining momentum. And, unfortunately, we were right last week when we said, unfortunately, it means we're probably going to start seeing, a pickup in mass shootings, which is defined as, a shooting of at least 4 people, where 4 casualties are involved. And so, look, we got to do better. I'm a very pro Second Amendment defender, but we have to be smarter about how we own weapons. And I do not have all the answers. There are some very practical solutions that I think would help. We've talked about mental health. We did this last week. I don't want to even go through, my thoughts again, because they're exactly what they were last week. But the people on Twitter, the second thing that happened that was interesting is everybody immediately took a position. And the reason they took a position is because this gentleman was white. And this gentleman was, he killed a cop, killed 9 other people, got shot in the leg and was able to be taken alive, right? They walked him out. And so, of course, we've all seen, the Tamir Rice's, the kid that was, at the playground with a BB gun, a fake gun, 13-year-old kid, cop pulls up. We saw the video. I don't need to tell you that, that kid was executed. Never had a chance, right? Never had a chance to even say, hey, this is a toy gun, or hey, I'm playing. There's been so many instances where people of color aren't given the opportunity to even say their piece. And so with this, people immediately took to Twitter thinking, okay, white guy, white privilege, it's why he wasn't killed. I'm not saying that's not the case, by the way. I'm just saying nobody even waited to get the facts on who this guy was. And then it comes out, then it turns out that, the guy that did this horrific act is Muslim. And so then immediately, people start deleting tweets, and then it became a different discussion about religion. And so it's just, again, to my point initially on Twitter, we have to do better. Everything can't be about color. Everything can't be about religion. There are better conversations to have around this issue. To do it, the disservice that it does it when we break it down and make it political, make it racial, that can be included in the conversation. But man, we got to get better at talking about these things. And I know Twitter isn't the real world, but there were people that I knew that was like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, it's narrative based living. And man, I wish we could do some more fact based stuff.
It was interesting, the media response, at least as I saw it, because what I saw was another shooting, obviously, the one you're talking about in Boulder at the grocery store. But what I saw was, aside from the headlines about the shooting itself, renewed push for gun control, renewed push for gun control, renewed push for gun control. Like Biden's going to use this for a renewed push for gun control. And that was before I even sort of like knew the circumstances of the event. Like you say, people jumping to conclusions or wanting to take control of the narrative. And I was like, wait, like how many people died? How many kids did that cop have? Like, what is the shooter's name even? And so the shooter's name is something that I wanted to touch on because I didn't know for like 2 days. It seemed like it was a game of hide and seek. I know we don't like to glorify the shooter, etc., but normally like you'll see it trending on Twitter or you'll see it mentioned somewhere. But here I felt like the name was being kept from us, and instead it was like this gun control thing. And then I see the name Ahmad al-Aliwi Alisa, and I was like, oh, I see now what's happening, right? Like you were saying, because then once the name comes out, then the story shifts to the religion thing, and so those are just sort of my thoughts. Clearly they want to make a push for gun control out of this because that's the narrative that the at least the progressive or more left-leaning media outlets went with, New York Times, etc. And so I'm not sure that that's the answer. I'm still not sure what the motive was in either case, for example. And so I'm not sure of a lot of things. But I think the two cases are vastly different. I think the one was more targeted, and I think the second one was just wanton violence and wishing for death, right? I mean, the guy was wearing an armored vest, I'm pretty sure. And so I think that you're going to see in the next couple of years, and when I say I don't think gun control is the answer, I say that because of all the guns that exist in the country. And so I think what you're going to see in the future is new technologies and new laws about how to own those guns and about how we're policing them and scanning for them with technologies that are now being developed and hopefully can be better deployed. But as far as solving issues, again, like you, I don't have the answers. It's above my pay grade.
The family of the shooter say that he may have been suffering from mental illness, which again, we've talked about in the past about, that conversation and how we do a horrible job in this country addressing mental illness and mental health. And so he was paranoid. He believed that his high school had hacked his Facebook page. His brother verified this. And, his family for years have tried to help, apparently, according to the article that I'm reading. Sad all the way around. My heart goes out to every single person that is affected. The same for Atlanta. The same for all of the other incidences that we're going to have moving forward, unfortunately, until we get better, even a little bit at a combination of things, right? We can own guns in a way, like you mentioned, smarter. In a more consistent basis across the country. Yeah, again, just another tough week when it comes to that. You have any good news stories, Nick? You would
Sure,
talk to me
I have
about
a
Bill
lot-
Maher in China because
I'd rather talk to you about the Brooklyn Bridge NFT because that's more lighthearted than Bill Maher. Bill Maher was talking about
how we're silly people.
we're silly people and we're not competing with China, which you and I actually talked a little bit about last week. But so let's talk about the NFTs and the Brooklyn Bridge because this is funny. So we talked about the Beeple, right? And we talked about the painting that sold for $69 million. Well, now John Cleese of Monty Python fame, he's an 81-year-old comedian. He has for sale a hand-drawn sketch of a bridge, and it's for sale for $69.346 million if you want to buy it as an NFT. It is, of course, a sketch of a bridge because he's got a bridge to sell you. And
he did.
That's right. The current highest bid is from Jeff Bezos's foreskin. And so 2021 continues to give. If you go to the auction page for the NFT itself, you will see the list of bidders there. And maybe I'll just do that real quick and see if Jeff Bezos's foreskin is still the highest bidder. And indeed, with a bid of $35,839, Jeff Bezos's foreskin is winning the bidding for the Brooklyn Bridge NFT. And so, what do you want to talk about, Gerardo? Do you want to talk about bubbles? Do you want to talk about
bubbles, bitches?
Echo chambers? Do you want to talk about an 81-year-old doing good by being funny? And he says he doesn't make the jokes, he just points them out.
I stand by a similar disclaimer, by the way.
Oh, it's funny. You can't make that stuff up.
Here's one. Ja Rule of hip-hop fame back in the early 2000s was involved with the festival called the Fire Festival. And if you guys recall, this was a festival that was supposed to be the creme de la creme of luxury music festivals, right? And it turned out to be an absolute disaster. There were lawsuits filed. People arrived and they were basically given Lunchables and a tent to camp on. And, the artist never showed up. And it was a mess, right? It was a mess. Well, he just managed to sell a Fire Festival painting as an NFT for $122,000. Meanwhile,
what gives it value? I saw, all kinds of tweets are getting sold now. Jack Dorsey sold his tweet. No underlying fundamental value there, right? More of a way to shift money around, or more of a bragging rights type thing, right? Because who honestly is spending $122,000 for whatever the fuck that was?
A painting of a fire festival in digital form. Meanwhile, I have companies like Magna Gold that are being given away right now that are spitting literal cash flow every single day. They are making $650 to $750 per ounce of gold, and they're going to sell, 50 to 75,000 ounces this year. And so you can do the math on the cash flow. The company has a market cap of 80 million Canadian, which is absolute insanity to me. And again, that won't last, but it doesn't mean it can't last for another month, maybe 2 months. No. It's interesting times. Let's talk about China, because I actually listened to a bit of President Biden's speech earlier. And he answered the question about China, and he said, listen, me and the president there are on friendly terms, but I was absolutely clear that we are competitive. China wants to be the biggest and the best at everything. And that's not going to happen. I actually was encouraged because this was one of those policy issues that for me is important, because I think it's of great consequence to the next generation, how competitive America can stay, right? And so he made it clear that, America is very much looking forward to continuing to be the superpower on the global stage that calls the shots. And so that was interesting to me. It was interesting to me how forceful he was at reiterating that message in the context of the meetings that just concluded and meetings that are being negotiated for on all sorts of fronts. Look, I've been really critical about the technology and the IP theft that China has been able to get away with for 30, 40 years. And this is something that President Trump was actually really good about, highlighting that. It was a great point. He was the first to really take a tougher stance on China. And I'm encouraged to see President Biden, at the very least in words, continue what he called a fair but very, direct approach as it relates to China. And then, you want to tell everybody about Bill Maher in China? I think it leads right into it.
Because we were talking about it last week. We were talking about Russia, North Korea, and China, and how I view China, and you agreed, as a more serious threat. And I've talked over the past months about how they're more unified, and their younger generation is more unified and more patriotic. And what that means for us going forward, right? Because they do want to be dominant, and frankly are in a lot of aspects, are toying around with a digital yuan, for example, and have tried to circumvent the petrodollar. It's no secret over the past couple of years with deals they made with Russia. And so anyway, all that aside, Bill Maher had a little skit this week, a comedian's 7-minute monologue about how we're not keeping up with China. And he used some of the typical tropes, right? He showed pictures of our airports next to theirs, and how outdated LaGuardia is next to Shanghai, how many cities they've built over the past 2 decades, how much of their population they've lifted out of poverty into the middle class. Meanwhile, the USA is going the opposite way on some of those things, wealth inequality. But the main point of the shtick was that the US is a silly people, right? They spend their time quabbling about stuff that doesn't matter and not getting actual stuff done. And he's obviously citing the partisan politics, but the examples he gave were like, it's been infrastructure year for the past 9 years, right? Like we had shovel-ready projects with the Obama administration that, never got dug, right? We're always talking about doing stuff, but never actually getting things done, even when we agree on things. And he cited how everyone wants to get rid of the penny, but we can't get rid of the penny because of bureaucracy and graft and lawyers. And he was talking about the Dr. Seuss thing the other week, which we were talking about as well, and how one of the images was a Chinaman, like an offensive image of a Chinaman. And he was like, who's not offended by that image? Like the 1.5 billion Chinese people that are coming to eat your lunch, right? And so I guess the last thing that stuck in my head was about how he was talking about in New York, Mayor de Blasio was talking about how the advanced student program, like the advanced academic program, wasn't going to be based entirely on academics, but more of a lottery system. And so, when you're not like fostering your best and brightest, when you're more worried about wokeness and political correctness than saying, that kid's smarter than the other kid, or more driven, or has more potential, or whatever it is, all the way to the things that you and I talk about, right? The oligopolies, the corporatism, the reason things don't get done in Congress because of lobbyists, et cetera. And then you see exactly what Bill Maher is talking about, and China becomes very worrisome. It's one of the things after the fourth turning that is very concerning for America as a country as this century unfolds. And so I think it's a storyline that's not going away anytime soon. And we, in fact, do have a lot of catching up to do on things like nuclear energy, which you were writing about this week, for example. They're well ahead on building those. They're well ahead on 5G. And so a lot of work to do, and a lot of societal and generational on the American side commitments that have to be made, going to the moon, beating the Nazi style, right?
A lot there. We should put a link up to the monologue. And yeah, no, there was a lot of, I have, like everybody, right? I have my agreements and disagreements with Bill Maher, but I think that on this one, he was actually pretty spot on. Pretty spot on. We've talked about shortages and COVID related shortages and supply bottlenecks here in the past. And we're seeing it with vehicles. I mean, they're saying that, well, for those not aware, there's a global shortage of computer chips. And so, everything from TVs to gaming consoles to smartphones and smart vehicles are being affected, right? And so you have car manufacturers from Europe to the US that are now canceling or delaying factory build outs because they can't get their hands on the computer chips that are necessary to make these things work. I mean, in Australia, I'm reading an article yesterday that the wait time for some car models right now is more than 6 months to buy a vehicle they want to sell you, and a vehicle you want to buy. You may have to wait 6 months. And so, I bring it up because I think this is something that's going to continue even post-COVID, and I think it's going to happen in the commodity space. I see a situation where, because of the lack of investment, because of the lack of efficiency, we're going to get ourselves in trouble. And of course, as usual, I think the most affected are going to be those that aren't as well off, right? I mean, there's a premium for things, and the people that can afford the premiums are going to be able to find them and source them. But something to watch. Any thoughts on that, Nick? Commodity shortages, food shortages, things of that nature, water shortages?
I have a SPAC for you on the chip manufacturing side, but not for free in a podcast. And two real world examples of the chip shortage. One is, we had to buy a nice Mac computer a couple of months ago for graphic design for our lovely websites, Resource, Stock Digest, and Daily Profit Cycle. And that computer took, you might even remember better than I, but months to get delivered.
3.5 months, I believe. 3.5, 4 months.
Because of the components that were needed for the high-end computer for graphic design. And then my truck, I bought a 2020 GMC pickup truck that was having problems with a sensor. Let me see if I can recall exactly what it was. A diesel particulate sensor. And it was in the shop multiple times for it. And the one time it was in the shop for like 5 or 6 weeks because they couldn't get the replacement chip that was needed for the sensor. And that resulted in GMC having to not repurchase my truck, but replace my truck with a new vehicle because the chip shortage made the truck be in the shop for so long that it qualified as a lemon. And so,
it's insane.
Right. And then they had trouble sourcing me a new vehicle because of the reasons that you were just describing. Right. And so that's how it's playing out in the real world.
Tough. Our taxes are going up, Nick, and we knew they're not as extreme as I think people projected. But President Biden is due to formally announce and outline his economic plan next week, I believe, and so it's pretty clear that the corporate tax and the tax rate for the better off amongst us is going to go up a bit. I'd love to hear your take there. My quick take is yes, there's going to be an increase. No, I don't see it as something that is so consequential that all of a sudden I no longer want to make money.
Right. Well, that's typically how taxes are, but that's also how frogs get boiled alive. And so it's something to definitely be cognizant of, especially because it's like the gun control thing, right? It's definitely a focus. I've seen too many articles and it being approached from too many angles for there not to be something coming. And these are just some of the things that are sort of floating around that I think are going to be grabbed and put into order in the next couple of months. And so just something to be aware of, but certainly I think a storyline or a narrative that's going to expand over the Biden administration, and one that you're certainly going to see fear newsletter promos based on. So we already saw the capital gains tax floated. We were talking about that with Yellen. I don't even know how long ago that was now. talking about tax and financial transactions, stock sales, or capital gains. We've seen this week or last week the floating of the $400,000 level. Biden saying, I can't say what it is. As you said, his plan is still going to come out. But if you're making 400 grand or more, that's your taxes are going to increase. And then, and this I agree with, actually, is we're talking about IRS enforcement, which is not a tax increase, but collecting taxes that are due that go unpaid. And it's no secret that the IRS has been vastly understaffed and underfunded for a long time, and that it's easy to hide money. It's easy to hide money, and it's easy to not pay as much taxes as you should, especially for high income earners. High, not 400,000, but like more than twice that, like $1 million plus a year. And so we're seeing more reports come out now about how we can increase enforcement, increase funding for the IRS, add more agents, target specifically some of these practices that are hiding money. And even, and this really gets to simple solutions, right? The requirement of some sort of 1099-like form for your bank accounts, right? That would have to justify up against your income on your reported tax. And so, not that that's not a tax increase, right? That's sort of like a scared straight program. That's sort of like, we got this tax form that says what your checking account and savings account say. How do you make that line up with what your your tax filings say, right? And so, if you don't have a good tax person, get one, because it's very complex. And that means both an accountant and a tax attorney, depending on your level of income. Get smart about how to protect yourself and your estate, your wealth. And I'm not talking about doing things illegally. There's always ways to get ahead of the system and use it to your advantage, but you need to know those people who can help you do that. So anyway, that is definitely coming, and that's what I wanted to say.
I like it. And just to clarify, because this is an important distinction, that 400,000 threshold will be for households, not individuals. So, if you're making 200,000 and your partner's bringing in the same amount, you might be, getting hit with a tax hike. And again, I don't think that the proposal is extreme considering what our balance sheet looks like. I also don't trust government to actually do anything wise with the money, though I will say I don't have a problem paying, the top tax rate and it going to 39.6% from the current 37%. If I can actually see you doing something that's tangible with the money, right? If we're really going to build out our highway system again, and our infrastructure, and our access to the internet, and the things that we talked about earlier, where China's really eating our lunch. The 2.6%, not a big deal. If it's just going to be wasted and we're going to continue to counterfeit money and not actually do anything with it, then I don't know why we pay taxes at all.
Well, and now you get to the point where I start to get fired up. I write my check to the IRS every year, like I'm supposed to,
me.
Right? And I'll complain about it, but I know I'm doing my part. But when you start to get pissed off is when you see things like you're talking about, right? When you see senseless corporate giveaways, when you see them, giving away tax breaks, et cetera, to companies to build factories that don't materialize or that never offer the jobs that were first promised, or when you see the rollout of a botched vaccine website that nobody can use, for example. And then it's like, and to bring it full circle, and then we can wrap this podcast up, it's like when you don't have control over it, when you continue to see military spending that's multiples above the next closest country, or when you see a country that's trying to take away your vote to have a voice in these procedures through vote suppression acts, right? And that's when you start to think, right, well, why the fuck am I paying these taxes to begin with? Agreed.
Mr. Hodge, what are you watching for in the markets this week? Any company specific market action that you're looking out for?
I'm going to talk about cardio again because the results that I was mentioning still haven't come out. And I saw a report from Leeds Research that was out today putting a $12.50 price target on the stock. And it's at like $4.50. And so they've got clinical results that are due out. I'm speaking with CEO David Elsley tomorrow, and we can talk more about it next week, but Cardiol Therapeutics is a company that I'm watching in the cannabis/CBD space.
I like it. I'll continue to watch for results from Chicano, which just made another discovery on its Soledad project in Peru. I'm, of course, eager for Kinsley Mountain results with New Plastrodome Gold and Nevada Sunrise Gold, and I am really, really intrigued to see what Gold Bull Resources is able to pull off, as I expect more results from the Sandman project in Nevada. I expect those this coming week as well. So look, there's a lot to like in the market if you don't care about share price and you're looking at value right now. And I think, when it comes to the resource space, which is specifically what I dabble in, it requires a bit of a patient approach. But, we preached this message with uranium late last year, and it took an extra quarter or two for things to really kick off, but that sector bottomed in March of 2020. And you go do a 52-week chart of companies like UEC or URC or anything C, fission, uranium, right? Those companies are up 5-fold, 6-fold from those levels. And so, and have a lot of runway, by the way. I wrote about it today for Daily Profit Cycle. So the gold space is going through something similar. People don't like boring. Sometimes boring gets it done, and sometimes boring allows you to maximize your profits. And just got to keep an eye on the value that's being added, right?
Lots of things out there to buy. We write about them week in and week out.
That's it, Mr. Hodge. Pleasure as always. I am Gerardo Del Real, along with my co-host, Mr. Nick Hodge. This was episode 110 of Bizarro World. Be kind, everybody. Stay safe.
I got to go create my new account, Elon Musk's foreskin. See ya.